Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Have you exhausted all traditional means of healing without success? Are you experiencing communications through ghosts, angels, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services to humanity at this time through consultations. These consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you desire clarity of what may appear to be unexplainable phenomenon, then contact me through my website at aguidinglight, spelled LITE.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
Yes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And our main website where you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is DARRYL E. Berry Jr. Now, he's the founder and CEO of Next Density, and he's also the author of Travel Far, Beginner's Guide to Out-of-Body Experience, including first-hand accounts and comprehensive theory and methods. His website is nextdensity.com, and joining me now is DARRYL Berry. And DARRYL, welcome to the X Zone.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
DARRYL, tell us a little bit about yourself and what started you on your path to discovering out-of-body experiences and sharing the information that you found.
Well, it was actually quite spontaneous. When I was a small kid, I was suddenly overcome with a sense of lethargy and tiredness. Mm-hmm. And so much so that I thought I would go lay down, even though it wasn't anywhere close to bedtime. I told my mom I was going to go lay down until I felt better. Mm-hmm. And I started walking to the bedroom, and the closer I got to my bed, the heavier I got, until I had to sort of plop myself on the bed so I could lie down. And after an indeterminate amount of time, I started to feel better, and I thought, let me go tell my mom I'm feeling better, since I told her I was feeling bad. So I got up out of bed to go tell her, and when I went to open the door, my hand went through the doorknob.
Wow.
So that's when I realized, okay, something isn't right. I turned back to the bed, and I saw a lump on the bed under the sheets, which I understood to be my physical body. So I ended up walking through the wall, walking through the door, walking through the walls, and so forth, and I was able to see what my mom was doing and confirm what she was doing afterwards, and that was my introduction into the experience.
Now, I understand that over the years doing out-of-body experiences that you've actually interacted with extraterrestrials, traveled through time, traversed outer space, glimpsed at non-physical structure, the non-physical substructure of the universe, and interacted with spiritual beings. How did you feel when you were doing all this?
Well, actually, it was pretty natural. I mean, the ETs started actually around the same time, actually. And you know, my understanding actually now is that pretty much everybody has interactions with extraterrestrials. It's just that most people don't remember their non-physical travels and what they do in the non-physical, because several times I'll be out of body and I'll see somebody out of body from a physical life, and they would have no memory of it. Sometimes they're like drunk, like they, you know, or sleepwalking. Sometimes they're conscious and active, but you talk to them about it the next day, and they don't recognize or remember what happened. But you can still tell them something about their life, like maybe they tell you, let's say, for instance, they tell you about something that they never told you before, and you can confirm it. So at the time when I started realizing what was going on to a certain extent, and I started flying around more and things like that, very regularly, I would just find myself standing in the living room, and I would see a short gray alien being standing in the doorway of the front door, just standing there staring at me. And this would happen regularly, like almost nightly.
Wow.
And sometimes I would have dreams where I would be standing out in the yard, and I would see an extraterrestrial craft hovering over the yard in front of the tree, over the tree. And other times I would see dream of fleets of craft flying over the sky. And later, when I did some research on this, I would find that would be a common thing that regular experiencers or contractees would experience. They would have dreams like this, as well as having experiences of seeing extraterrestrial beings like the Greys. And at the time, I mean, you know, sometimes I can't really tell you how much of it was physical and how much of it was non-physical. I got to tell you that I saw these little gray beings, and I never read about it before. I was only like, 5, 6 years old. So that was my introduction to gray aliens. I was just seeing them in the living room. And I remember at the time, they would tell me in some way, I don't know how they would tell me, perhaps telepathically, but I would gather from them, or they would tell me in whatever way that they were my real family, but later I had contact with a tall gray who introduced himself as a fall in another lifetime. But that's a different story from these experiences. But another interesting thing was I had the experience that they transferred to me information on how to construct one of their crafts, which I never tried to do because I had the information that, there were the other people on the planet Earth that might be interested in that. But that's how I got interested into the ET phenomenon, just by seeing these gray alien beings. And, of course, later I researched and found out about the abduction phenomena and the genetic experimentation that's been going on.
Why did you decide to write your book on out-of-body experiences?
Well, for several reasons. One is just because it's what I know. Another is just because it's what I like, because over the years when I was a kid and I first started to become aware, I guess towards my teenage years, that this is not something that everybody just does, I started to read a lot about it. And I read tons and tons about it. I mean, at one period of time, I read literally every out-of-body experience book that I could find. And then it got to the point where I started to have more and more experiences. Now, suffice it to say, it's not like every single day since I was 4 or 5 I had these experiences. But, over the decades, I've had some substantial experiences. And then it started to become to the point where I would read people's books and I would be like, that's not so accurate, or this is possible. And I started to see inaccuracies. And I started to realize, I'm kind of an expert on this thing, so that kind of made me want to share my knowledge, because one of the things I noticed is a lot of books that I've read, a lot of people have a lot of dogmatic beliefs. And I think because at one period of time, the only people who talked about this stuff was people who saw it as kind of, a code and secret, and people in these kind of, secretive orders and stuff like that. And, I think it's really time for us to recognize that it's not some kind of secretive thing or some kind of occult thing. It's really just a natural phenomenon. It really represents what's going to be the next step in human evolution, which is the fact that we will become more conscious of ourselves, more conscious of the different aspects of our beings. Rather than having this great divide between waking and sleeping, and this great divide of conscious and unconscious, we start to become more integrated and become more aware of ourselves and what's going on. So I really see it as just a joy, something I like to do, as well as, my little part in helping to help the human race progress,
Why do you think it's now, in the years around anywhere from, let's say, 1967 up, that more and more people were actually becoming more aware of the New Age spirituality and the increase in human consciousness? And yet, those who still believe are in the minority of the population. Why do you think this is?
I think it's just cyclical. Like, when you look into civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria and people that found evidence for civilizations older than that, and then you look at the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and I think cyclically throughout the human history of the planet, there's been civilizations that become very advanced. And I think this is just one of those periods of cycles. People talk about 2012 and galactic energy, and people have all kinds of reasons for it. But I just think that it's just cyclical. I think it's just cyclical, and we're starting to get to the point that we start to become aware of these things. You can see the progression from the industrial age, and then we start to get into computers. We started to link the world together. Then we started to be aware more of extraterrestrials with the crash craft, like in 1947, which opened us up to a galactic community, which opened us up to more advanced technology that the back engineered from these crash crafts, and on and on and on. So I think we're just in another phase of the cycle of the planet Earth, will be going into a more advanced state. I really believe that this is going to be one of those cycles that we don't destroy ourselves. I really think this is going to be one of those cycles, partly because we have such great help from extraterrestrials that I think we're going to heed. There's the Essassani here, there's the Pleiadians here. So I think it's just cyclical. And I think that I really think it's becoming more and more aware. There was a period of time where, you and I were talking about stuff like this, we'd be burnt at the stake, not too long ago, like 100 or 200 years ago, you know what I mean? So I really think it's progressing greatly. I really think that, especially when you look at the people who've done a lot of future travels, like Robin Monroe traveling into the future and saw what's going on. Lisa Royal, she's a channel for the Pleiadians. She got in contact with this group of humans from an alternate timeline from our future that kind of talked about what the future of Earth will be like. So I just definitely see it as cyclical, but I see it as this is one of those cycles where finally we'll sort of break that barrier of self-destruction and continue progressing. So that's my hope. I think part of what I'm doing is to try to help facilitate that. At the least I want to help change myself, so I can be at least be eligible to switch to a different planet, at least if we destroy ourselves again.
Tell me, how can out-of-body experiences and astral travel help people like my listeners who have never heard of this before?
Okay. I want to make clear that it has its limits. It's not some kind of, cornucopia where you learn how to out-of-body travel and you're suddenly spiritual or enlightened. It's not, quote, spiritual. It's just a mode of perception, a mode of experience. So let me get that out of the way. But what it is a mode of perception that allows you to extend totally beyond our normal self-imposed limits of time, and limits of space. So, for instance, one experience I had as a child was this. I suddenly became aware floating up close to the ceiling. And I noticed I didn't have a body. I was just a field of consciousness, like a point or field of consciousness. I directed my attention towards my bed like I would normally do, look back and look at my body, and I noticed a non-physical body floating in the air, and I noticed a physical body floating on the bed. So I became aware that really I'm consciousness, that I can exit my non-physical body, and my non-physical body can exit my physical body. Now, just this one experience, if everybody experienced it, it would eradicate racism. Because once you realize your consciousness, and then you go out of body and see other people out of body, well, you realize, well, they're consciousness too. So what sense does it make for me to hate this other person because they have a light-skinned body and I have a dark-skinned body, or vice versa, when I realize that beyond the body, we're exactly the same thing. Not only that, but we all experience the same body. Like I've also used my altered state ability and my out-of-body ability to see what I look like in other lifetimes. And I've had light-skinned bodies, I've had dark-skinned bodies, I've had bodies in technological societies and bodies in primitive societies. I've had bodies on Earth and I've had bodies on other planets. So it totally shifts your perspective. And that's what spiritual growth is really about, is perspective. You know, to develop a perspective that's greater than the physical body. But that's not to say I don't still experience myself as a physical body. But I'm just saying it gives you a broader perspective to where you don't hate people because of that. You don't see that as the great divider like we often do, where, you know, dark-skinned people fighting light-skinned people, and this religious person is fighting that religious person. Well, guess what? I had a lifetime in India where I was a Hindu. I had a lifetime in China where I was a Taoist. So what I'm going to hate those people for? So just that one experience can be a great paradigm shift. So I think the foundation of it is just the paradigm shift you can have by having a broader perspective of yourself, a broader perspective of others. You know, a broader perspective that realizes this lifetime is not it. You know, a lot of the things people do is because they think this lifetime is it. So this lifetime I got to make it work. I gotta get that million. I have to, and I don't care who I step on to get it. You know, I got to get what I need because this is it. That's not the case. This is just one lifetime out of many thousands. And really, we're on a very multi-dimensional, multi-spectrum path of learning and development and growth. And it's a lot less stressful. Imagine being unafraid of death. Imagine knowing that when your relative dies, that you know they're on to a better place. Like I went out of body and I met my grandmother after she died. You know, absolutely no fear of death.
Where did you meet your grandmother?
Well, what happened is I went into an altered state. You know, I think this was one of the periods of time. Like I said, I went off and on throughout the years.
Right.
This is one of the periods of time when I was practicing a lot, so I was able to easily go into an altered state. And all I did was just use my intent to focus on wherever she was, because I don't really know where she would be. Because, you know, sometimes people, when they die, depending on what your awareness level is, you go into another physical body, you know, there's different ranges of time. So I didn't know if she was in another body again.
Right.
I didn't know if she went to a different system. So I just intended, let me go to where she is. And what happened is I exited the body and I materialized, for lack of a better word, in this area called the void. There are certain areas of the non-physical that are like outer space with no stars. So you'd imagine the deepest, darkest outer space with no stars, but the void almost has a presence to itself. It's almost like the void is alive sometimes, but it's just a void. And so I'm in the void, and suddenly I hear her laughter. Like she had a distinct laughter, and I heard her laughter, and suddenly I saw her come into my vision. And she didn't even have a strict physical body anymore. And at this point, she had let go of her identification with the physical body and her previous identity enough to where she was a cloud of light. So she looked like a cloud, a rainbow cloud of light, except I could see her face in this cloud of light, and you could feel her presence. Like in the non-physical, your feel of what you perceive is even more potent than what you visually see a lot of the time. So I could feel those, or I could see her presence. And, you know, I just explained some stuff of what I knew about the afterlife and things like that, and she just calmly listened. And it was the end of the experience. So I pretty much met her in the void. And it was a pretty cool experience. So I knew she was fine. I was able to visit her. And so imagine the pain that people go through when their loved ones die. Imagine being able to go out of body and speak to them. And the ironic thing is, a lot of times when our relatives pass, they're trying to communicate with us. But we don't have the tools in order to be aware of that communication, or to meet them halfway. And the out-of-body experience would allow you to do that. So, I mean, imagine a world in which you realize there's really no death, really. It's just your physical body dies, just like how you have a car and it starts to break down. Well, what do? You trade it in, or you sell it, or you send it to the junkyard, and you get another car. It's very simple. So just because you get rid of your car don't mean you lose contact with a human being. You can be talking to them on the cell phone while they're at the call lot, That's what the out-of-body experience is. So it's a totally more different and dynamic expression and experience that I think will really, I really have no doubt. I have no doubt that these experiences will become a staple of human existence, because it is. It's just not consciously a staple. And I think the work that people like you are doing, we're having these shows and spreading the awareness, like right now, we're something to talk about. But eventually it'll be just a part of our lives, like cell phones. We'll
really
do that out of the body. Yeah, I'm really sleepy. Let's go out of the body and finish our conversation. Okay. So it'll become like that.
I'm very interested in hearing the interaction that you had with extraterrestrials. Can you tell us about that?
Definitely. The longest interaction I've had with extraterrestrials has been with this being called volcanoes. One thing you'll find if you read a lot of experiences is the introduction of a guide, which often is a different lifetime or a relative or a friend from the same or a different lifetime. So this is one of the periods of time when I was practicing a lot, like around the year 2000. Mm-hmm. And this being started appearing in my imagery. Like when you go into the theta state and trance, you see all kinds of images, and this being would appear with this purple cloak on. And over time, he started to reveal himself, and he turned out to be a gray alien being, like a 6 or 7 foot tall gray alien being with ridges on his head. He explained to me that he's a father of mine from a different lifetime on this planet called Antonia. And, and of course I was skeptical about it. But he told me a lot of stuff. I got to the point where I was able to get into a very good telepathic contact with him. One time I was riding on my bicycle to work, and he telepathically yelled to me, "Stop!" I stopped my bike immediately. And right when I did, this truck was coming from behind this building, but there was this big building that apparently reflected the sound of the truck, so I couldn't hear it. But if I wouldn't have stopped, I'd have got totally smashed. Another time I was riding to work, and he told me, "Go this way." He just said, "Make a turn here," which is like a very roundabout way. I was still about 4 blocks away from work, so I couldn't see the building or anything. But he said, "Turn right this way." I went right. I took a little longer ride to get to work. When I was pulling up to work, I saw these 2 guys hiding behind a car. And but from my perspective, I could see them, but if I had came my normal way to work, they would have been hiding behind the car. But they must have heard me coming up when I got close, and they said, "He's coming from the other side." They turned around and they were going to rob me. So different things like that let me know it's really a communication as well as other things he told me. So we just had a communication. I got to know him. I went out of body and saw him several times. He showed me around certain things. He showed me the planet that we used to live on. Apparently we destroyed ourselves in war, which is why I'm here now as a human. And, so pretty much it was just a lot of get to know you. He told me a lot of metaphysical stuff, and that was the introduction with him. I did a lot of reading on extraterrestrials, and eventually I started to realize that they were telepathic. So I decided to try to telepathically reach out to extraterrestrials to have a contact. And what happened is I would go to meditation every day for about 30 days, and I would call out telepathically. Any extraterrestrials in the area, show yourself to me. I want to see you. I wanted to see you. And what happened is I was coming home from work one night. I worked at a different job at the time. I got off work at about 11 o'clock, and I saw these pink flashes in the clouds. And from my research, I knew that's not normal the way it looked. So I decided if I have to drive past state, I'm going to drive to those flashes in the clouds. I was driving to the flashes in the clouds, and it ended up going straight to my home. I didn't have to take any odd turns or anything. But when I got to my neighborhood, I had to just drive about 6 blocks past my neighborhood house. I parked the car, and I'm looking at these flashes in the clouds. And the pink flashes started flashing faster and faster and faster. Next thing you know, the cloud is this glowing pink, and this beautiful craft floats out the cloud. If you look online and you search for what is that called? Gulf Breeze. If you search Gulf Breeze UFO, and you see the images of what that UFO looked like, and I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you that those pictures are accurate. I don't know if somebody photoshopped them or photographed them, but I can just tell you, the picture that you see, most of the pictures you see when you see the image of a craft on the Gulf Breeze UFO, that's what I saw. Saw a craft that looked just like that, float out the cloud. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to be ready. So I was freaking out, man. I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody get abducted. I'm rolling up the car windows. And I just saw the craft come out the cloud, and I saw the craft go back up in the cloud, but everything just seemed strange. When I got back home and looked at the time, an hour and a half had passed. So there was like an hour and a half of something that happened when that craft came out the cloud that I can't remember to this day. That's just one of the experiences I had. And during that period of time, I had several different experiences with certain type of craft. And I also talked to this other guy. I was just speaking to this guy. This was when I lived. This was in New Orleans, when I lived in New Orleans. And I was talking to this guy. We just, started talking about metaphysical stuff. And without me even mentioning anything about this experience, I don't even remember if I had it before after talking to him. But he told me a similar experience where he saw a craft like this over the lake. He just saw the light, and the way he described it perfectly matched what I saw. So apparently there's this certain race of ETs that frequent the New Orleans area that have craft that look like the craft that was in Gulf Breeze, Florida. So, I seem to have some kind of connection with this race of beings. As a matter of fact, I'm working on contacting them again. I want to get to the point where I can constantly see them. I can constantly get on the craft, because I really believe, and I really know that conscious extraterrestrial contact is also part and parcel of our progress as a species, our progress as a planetary species. So the part of what I want to do is grow to start to initiate more conscious contact, get other people involved, so we can start having very conscious contact with beings. And of course, I'm not the only one that's doing this. There's DARRYL doing this. You probably heard of Stephen Greer. He's doing this.
Yeah.
There's other people who start to initiate conscious contact. So I think it's very important. It's not anything special. Anyone can do it. Like I've told people before, I used to try to get into arguments with people. Oh, ETs can't be here because, the nearest star is this many thousand light years away. It takes this many thousand. These people have technology where they can go through space without going through space. They can switch to a different dimension and travel through an alternate dimension that's not bounded by time, and then come back out of that dimension, and then they're here. That's why the craft is blanking off and on. It was blanking off and on because it was manifesting in this dimension from another dimension. They don't have to go from A to B. They disappear at A and reappear at B. So that's what's going on. So these beings, some of them, they have civilizations that's been around for thousands of years continuously. We're relatively a baby species, so they have a lot to teach us, and just being able to communicate with them is necessary to have a more integrated consciousness. That's why I lost awareness. That's why at a certain point I lost awareness, because we have to integrate more. We have to integrate ourselves more so we can be aware of these altered states more and more consciously, so we can interface with these beings that are so conscious on these different states. So, that's one of the sightings I saw. I have other sightings where I was driving home from Georgia. I took a trip from Georgia, and I saw these same pink flashes at the horizon, and they kind of just took off over my car. You can see these pink flashes of light just streak across the sky, leaving this pink line across the sky from horizon to horizon. So these beings are around. All you have to do is just intend to see them, and they would show themselves to you. It's not to say that they're just waiting around to contact people. Some of them, do that, but they're just here. There's different races that are here for various reasons. Some of them are here just to explore, like us. We want to send our satellites out into space. Some of them just hop in their car and travel. Some of them are here because they have different lifetimes here. Like, for instance, DARRYL has a lifetime on that society, so their society he's in contact with is really him in a different lifetime. The same thing with DARRYL. Just like Robert Monroe, when he went out of body, he met an advanced being who was himself. So a lot of the beings that are here, they're here because they're meeting their previous incarnations. Just like, of course, like I said, volcanoes. He was coming here to visit me. These graves, these other graves I met as a kid, they said that I was a part of them. So a lot of them are here simply because we have lifetimes in those races. So different beings are here for various reasons. But if you start to meditate and start to be aware of these altered states, and go into altered states and telepathically express your intention, you will start to see them. So it's not really that big of a deal. I know it seems like it, but it's not really that big of a deal, really. All you have to do is just intend it and work at it, and you'll start to have experiences. And more to the point, you'll start to remember experiences that you've already had. Several of the different sources I found to be authentic, like DARRYL and Lisa Rayel, both of their contacts say that everybody has had contact. They say that literally everybody has had contact. But just like how people, I see them out of body and they don't remember their out of body experiences. But I might be able to tell them, yeah, I saw you with this person. And it was, wow, that's my so-and-so. You know, how do you know about that person, you know? Oh, that's my so-and-so. Or, you know, the same way we have extraterrestrial encounters. But because we're so fragmented, we repress the information because we're so fragmented, we put it into our unconscious. Because we're not used to being in an altered state, it's remembered in a part of our mind that we don't consciously access. So all of this stuff is really integrated, which is why I mentioned it all together.
How do we know that this is real and just not a matter of one's imagination taking over?
I would say test it. You know, everything I've done, I've tested it. You know, just like when I was channeling volcanoes, he told me stuff that has real-world results. With the out-of-body experience, I'll give you a good example. I have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, his name is Lewis. And, you know, like I said, I'm an expert on the experience. I've been having it off and on since I was a kid. I've done various things. But he takes it to a different level. I mean, he was addicted to it. He took it to a lot of what I know, I learned from him, like I mentioned in my book. So what I did was I decided to test myself as well as test him, as well as test the experience. What I did was I decided to go out of body and meet him without telling him. And what I did was, when you're in the out-of-body state, you can make yourself look however you want. So what I did was, before I went out of body, I had the intention that I would look like I'm wearing a long white robe, but that I would have a gold band around the center of my robe, around the chest area. And I decided that I would tell him something. I don't remember what the phrase was, but I decided I would tell him some crazy phrase. So I went into an altered state. I intended to go to see Lewis. And I became aware in front of Lewis in the out-of-body state. And again, like I said, he's pretty much always out of body. Whenever his body's not active, he's pretty much out of body. So, but this was one of my more hazy experiences. I wasn't fully conscious.
Right.
So I remember seeing him. I remember talking to him, and then the experience ended. So, you know, we talk on the phone regularly. We don't always talk about out-of-body stuff. We talk about anything, you know. So the next day we started talking about whatever. And out of the blue, without me telling him anything about it, he said, you know, Darryl, I saw you out of body last night. I was like, really? And he was like, you was wearing this big, stupid white shirt with this gold band around the middle. You know, I was like, you know, because, you know, we joke around with each other. I was like, yeah, you know, I was trying to find. And he was like, you looked like he was drunk. You know, and I was like, you know, I know I wasn't too conscious that one.
Right.
I mean, so bam, you know, and I've had several experiences like that. So where another example is, you know, I had an out-of-body experience, and this is one of my fully conscious experiences. I was fully conscious of where was going on. It was a spontaneous experience that I remember right. And lo and behold, I see one of my ex-girlfriends. You know, and you know, we ended on good terms. We didn't talk regularly, but we didn't talk in a few years at that time. But you know, we were funny with each other. And I went to try to talk to her, you know, and I noticed that there was this guy who was there. He was trying to stop me from talking to her. He was kind of jealous. So I realized that's probably her boyfriend. And I noticed that there was another female and another guy there. So it was my ex-girlfriend. There was a guy who was obviously attached to her. There was another female and another guy. So I noticed he was giving me some problems trying to talk to her. I wasn't trying to flirt with anything. I was just trying to talk to her. And so I was like, okay, let me just go fly off and do my thing. So I flew off and I did my thing. So the next day, I still had her number. She was still living with her mom at the time. So I called her up. I said, hey, you know, I went out of body last night, and I thought, you know, the people that I know I talk about this stuff with. And I said, you know, I saw you out of body, and there was this guy who was there who was jealous, who was trying to stop me from talking to you. And there was this other female and this other guy. Now, keep in mind, I haven't spoken to her at this time in years. And she was like, that's interesting. She was like, I have a boyfriend, and I have my best female friend and her boyfriend, and we go everywhere together. She said, you know, whenever they're not working or whatever, they're always going out to movies together. They go everywhere together. And I happen to see them out of body together. So I mean, that's just another example. So the way you know it's real is by testing it. You don't believe me. You don't believe what somebody read in the book. You learn how to do it and you test it. You go out of body and you see somebody doing something and you confirm. Were you at the grocery store at this time? You know, you go out of body and see this person said this happened. Does this really happen? You test it. You know, it's like I said, it's not anything mystical or occult. It's just a fact of life. So being that it's a fact of life, just like how do we know that a hydrogen atom has, you know, one electron? You put it under an electron microscope and saw it. You know, you just test it. That's what you do. So in my experience, I've tested it enough where I can know that that's what happens. I've either tested it with direct experience, or I've had an experience and I read somebody's book and I was like, wow, that's what I experienced. You know, you can directly test it yourself. You can corroborate with other experiences. Just like any other scientific experience. You just test it.
All right, stand by, Darryl. You and I have to take a couple of commercial breaks here. Please stand by. Exonation. Our guest this hour is Darryl Berry Jr., and he is the author of, get your pencils and paper out, because here it comes, Travel 4, a beginner's guide to out-of-body experience, including first-hand accounts and comprehensive theory and methods. His website is nextdensity.com or www.darryleberryjr.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 8 until midnight, Eastern Time, that is, on the Starcom Radio Network. Darryl and I will be back on the other side of this short break from our kind sponsors. Don't go away.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com. Are you considering calling a psychic to read your situation? Then consider David Champion, a psychic medium for more than 20 years with thousands of readings under his belt. David Champion will make you feel comfortable. He has proven to be honest and accurate. He's a straight shooter. There's no guesswork. What he sees is what you get. While he is a medium, most of the calls focus on relationships. Not only love, but work, school, neighbors, and more. Need help with finding a job and preparing for the interview? Are you dealing with people who are obstacles in your path? For more information, go to davidchampion.com, $1.50 per minute paid by credit card with a minimum of 30 minutes. For your reading with David Champion, call 1-877-702-8598. That's 1-877-702-8598.
Hi, this is Eric Rawls of Cosmoverse.com, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Hi, this is Blade Runner, and you are listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, I'm Laura Sabrin of Feast to Fields Organic Vineyard in Jordan, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, my name is Lady Ashley, the White Witch of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal talk radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to The X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Exonation, Darryl Berry Jr. is our special guest this hour. His website is nextdensity.com. He's the author of Travel Far, a beginner's guide to out-of-body experience, including first-hand accounts and comprehensive theory and methods. First of all, Darryl, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Is it hard for people to learn how to do out-of-body experiencing?
No, I don't think it is. Really, the basis of what I teach is basically learning how to get into the theta or delta state consciously. That's really the foundation of every single out-of-body experience. So it's really just persistent practice at altered states so that you can learn how to be conscious at that depth of state. So what I learned is, as I learned from my friend Lewis, when a person goes to sleep and they lose awareness at a certain point, that's what I call the consciousness threshold. That's where they sort of disassociate their consciousness and lose awareness at that point. But if you meditate enough, what happens is that threshold moves farther and farther back. And when you get into what's called the theta state, you start to have imagery, like some people report what's called hypnagogic imagery. That's when you're in the theta state. Mm-hmm. And when you get into very, very deep theta, you're basically almost disconnected from the physical body. When you start to get into the theta delta range, that's where sleep paralysis happens. I'm sure you've heard of sleep paralysis before.
Yes.
People they're either going to sleep, but they can't move. That's the state where you're detached from your physical body, but yet not completely into the non-physical. When you're in a paralysis state, if you relax and move or relax and attune yourself to another location, you will move into the out-of-body experience. So over the years, I've read a whole lot about it, and I've experimented throughout the years with all kinds of various techniques. So ever since then, I've pretty much condensed it to a very simple process of practicing various techniques and meditations to learn how to push your threshold back and get to the point where you can consciously enter these altered states. So I would say it's simple. It just takes some persistence. Most people they just try to get out of body without having the foundation of being able to keep their awareness intact. So it's just being persistent and practicing the exercises so that you can develop your conscious awareness, what I call the flexibility of consciousness.
What is the difference between an out-of-body experience and a dream?
Well, a dream is basically a hallucination. Like when I talk about dream, I talk about and imagining that you're having it, that's no different than a daydream. Like when you're in the elevator and you have 10 floors to go and you kind of lose focus and suddenly you see yourself on the beach in the Bahamas. When we dream at night, that's exactly what happens when we have a dream at night. We're just hallucinating. But the out-of-body experience is happening at the same time. This is how I learned this. I learned this as a kid before I read anything about it. And that's one of the things as well that you were asking, how do you know it's real? That's actually another way that proves it to me, because still the bulk of my experiences, I would say, is during my childhood. Like as I started to get older and then I started working a job,
right,
getting interested in girls and stuff like that, it became more of a a directed thing. Like here, I wonder what it's like at this planet. So I would focus and I would go out of body and see this planet. I wonder what happened when people die, and I would go explore that. But when I was a kid, I was just getting out of body all over the place. And what had happened is I would start having dreams of flying or dreams of falling. And let's say I would fall off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
But what started to happen was periodically I would have a dream of flying, and suddenly I'd become aware and I would be floating out of body at the ceiling. Like the dream would disappear and I would be floating out of body at the ceiling. And then I would become aware at the ceiling and I would just fall back into my body. And then I realized, wow, that's what was happening, because previous nights I would feel myself falling I would dream of falling off of a cliff. And I would feel myself fall off of a cliff. And boom, I would just wake up and feel myself, it would feel like I crashed, and I would wake up from the bed. But eventually what would start happening is I would become conscious floating on the ceiling, and the dream would disappear, and I would realize, wow, when I dreamt of flying up in an airplane and I felt myself floating, I was floating out of the body. And when I dreamt of falling off of a cliff and I felt myself fall, I was falling from the ceiling. And then it started to happen where I would just float out without a dream. I would just lay down to go to sleep, and suddenly I would hear a click in my head, and I would start floating off of the bed. And slowly I started to learn that dreams are sort of a mask for the out-of-body experience, just like the daydream is a mask for the physical body experience. And when a person is in the elevator and they suddenly daydream of being in the Bahamas, they're still physically in the elevator, and it's just an hallucination. Well, the same thing, the out-of-body experience is totally different from a hallucination.
All right, it's called an out-of-body experience, and you leave your conscious body or your physical body, and you go, well, into the future. You go to visit those who have passed on the other side. You go to other planets. You interact with extraterrestrials. Is there any possibility that you may not be able to find your way back home to your body? And if that happens, what happens to the physical body that you left behind?
Well, in my experience, generally, no. There's only one instance I've heard of where something like that happened, and that's with Robert Monroe. When he went so far, like we have a certain frequency as humans, and there's basically a gradation. So basically, you get out of the body and you're in a dimension that's very similar to the physical, and you can go higher and higher into more and more esoteric realms. But you can go so far into these extremely non-human realms that basically you're not human there, and you start to disassociate from the human experience. I've never gone that far. So, but Robert Monroe was a pioneer. I guess he was testing the experience. But other than that, I've never come across and I've never experienced any sort of way of being lost.
But that's you. That's you. You've got this experience behind you. But what about somebody who doesn't have the experience, who is a novice at this? They're just beginning. What happens if they get lost and they can't get back home?
Well, that's the thing. Like, my experience is based upon those newbie experiences. And remember, I was a kid.
Right.
I was a kid when I first started. So if I couldn't get lost, I know anybody couldn't get lost. And what I found is, when you go to get out of body, you will be more fighting to stay away than get back in, because the slightest fright, you'll be pulled back in. Like if you see something that, sometimes you might see some kind of non-physical beings. I mean, they look very non-human, and if you see something that really frightens you, you'll get pulled back in. The slightest thing to pull you back in initially. So, in my experience, when you first start out, you will be more apt to get pulled back in than anything. I mean, you will be upset trying to fight to stay out. So it's actually really the opposite. By the time you start traveling so far that, let's say, like you're saying, like we're talking about new people, by the time a person travels so far that as a new person they will be afraid of being lost, by the time you can travel that far, you'll know you can't get lost. You know what I mean? So when you first start, it's kind of pretty hard to get away from your physical body. When I very first started, all I could really do most of the time is just float to the ceiling and float back. I mean, I spent months and years lying at the ceiling of my bedroom. I got very familiar with the ceiling of my room. My nose would be right in front of the ceiling. And then it got to the point where I can walk up and down the street. I would just spend all night walking up and down the street. But then eventually I started to think, wow, because they told me in grade school about Big Ben. I was like, I wonder if I can go to Big Ben. I went to Big Ben out of body. And then I started to do more and more and more. So by the time I was traveling into outer space, absolutely new. It was just a thought. I could be on the other side of the planet. I could just think back to the physical body. You're back at the physical body. Or, you could be on the other side of the planet and you feel some kind of discomfort, and boom, you just slam back into your physical body, and you realize, oh man, I have to urinate.
Yeah.
So then you get up to go urinate and you lay back down. So, there's really, in my experience, there's no way you can get lost. Now you can, like I said, there's certain dimensions that are just so non-human that you will be aware of it anyway. And, you just want to come back before you just dissociate from being a human. Other than that, you just can't get lost. By the time you travel that far, anyway.
Let me ask you this hypothetical question. Let's say that you're traveling out there. Your physical body is at home, okay? Mm-hmm. There's a break-in in your house. Somebody kills you. Your physical body no longer exists. You're dead for all intents and purposes. What happens to your out-of-body body at that time? Does it remain in the cosmos, or what happens?
It's a very good question. I'll give two different variations to that answer.
Okay.
So the first answer is this. Just like when we normally go to sleep, because one thing we can discuss as well, every time you go to sleep, you go out of body. And if you go out of body enough, you will see enough people out of body to know that whenever you go to sleep, everybody goes out of body. Most of them just don't remember it. Most people just hover close to their physical body. Like I did as a kid, you hover by the ceiling, you're close to your physical body. But some people travel as well. Now, everybody knows that when you're sleeping and the baby starts crying or somebody drops, something in the kitchen and makes a loud bang, boom, immediately you shoot up. If you're out of body and that happens, and the baby starts crying or something happens, like the experience I used earlier, suddenly you have to urinate and you feel this discomfort, you're immediately pulled back to your physical body. That happens all the time. It's no different than if you're just normally sleeping at night. If there's something that's going to negatively affect your physical body, if somebody's breaking in and you hear some crash, you automatically will get up because, again, whenever you go to sleep, when you hit that delta state, you're in the out-of-body state. So that's just always going to happen. So consciously getting out of body does not change that program, you can say. It doesn't change that dynamic that happens where if there's a threat to your physical body, there's an alertness that happens that pulls you back, whether you're consciously out of body or unconsciously out of body. Now, let's say, give me your example. Let's say you're asleep in the car.
Yeah.
You're out of body, and the car has a crash event. Boom, your body just dies instantly. Well, you will be aware that your physical body died. You will be aware that something has happened, that your physical body has died, and you would just remain in the out-of-body state. Because all death is a permanent out-of-body experience.
So is it...
physical body is alive, there's a connection.
Is it possible that what people see when they report seeing ghosts are just actually people who are having out-of-body experiences?
Definitely. I would say it's probably less common than deceased people because most people they just hover close to their physical body. But a certain amount of them, because let's say somebody moves out of town. Let's say somebody moves out of town and moves from where they normally live.
Right.
For the first month or two, when they go to sleep, they'll probably automatically, spontaneously out-of-body experience back to their own home. I know this because when I moved out of New Orleans, I found myself spontaneously always in my old backyard or my old bedroom. So sometimes that would happen. You might see what looks like a ghost, and it's your grandmother, it's your boyfriend. He was thinking about you when he went to sleep. So a lot of that does happen. But a lot of it is just this incarnate beings as well, or even extraterrestrials too. But that does happen.
What is the message that you would like to leave with the members of the X-Zone Nation around the world tonight about out-of-body experiences?
Well, I would say the main message I would want to give is just to realize that it's nothing to be afraid of. I had my first experience when I was 4 or 5 years old, so even a kid can do it. And it's very fun, and it would definitely expand your perspective. And that's what it's really about, is about your perspective. It's not like you just go out of body and suddenly you're spiritual, your perspective is changed necessarily. But the things you experience out of body, it's just greatly expansive. Who I am today is based largely in part on the out-of-body experience and what I experienced while doing it. So I would just suggest that people learn about it and get into it. The visual is going to be a staple of our existence consciously anyway. So I just like people to know about it, to realize it's a possibility. Also, I like people to know about it because it happens, man. Like when it started happening to me spontaneously, and I started to tell the people around me, they was like, "Oh, you're just dreaming," and stuff like that. So your kid is probably experiencing it. You need to know about this. Mm-hmm. Your kid is probably experiencing it. Your spouse is probably experiencing it. So we need to know about this so we can be a comfort and a support to the people around us, so they won't know that they know they're not going crazy, but they know that they shouldn't disregard their experiences. So you can be a part of people's lives. I mean, imagine all the experiences I had. I was interacting with ETs. I was interacting with extraterrestrials. I was flying around. I was going through time. And my mom, my dad, and my sister, they couldn't be involved in that because they was telling me I was just a dream, so I stopped telling them about it. So you never know what your kid is experiencing right now. Your kid might have an entire night life that you can be aware of. So I think it's important that for various reasons that we become aware of it,
Let our listeners know how they can get a copy of your book and how they can find out more about you on the Internet.
Awesome. Probably the easiest way is just to go to nextdensity.com. That's NEXTDENSITY, nextdensity.com. On that webpage, there's links where you can buy the book. It's available in America. It's available in Europe. It's available in paperback. It's available in digital format all around the world, in Mexico and everywhere. Also offer classes and courses people can take as well. For early readers of the book, I also have a question and answer on Skype, and you're welcome as well if you would like to come. It'll be a question and answer on Skype on Saturday, July the 11th. For anybody who's interested, so that's the best way. Just to go to nextdensity.com.
Hey, Darryl, it's been a great hour with you. Thank you so much for sharing so much information with us on out-of-body experiences. I wish you the very best of success with your book, and I look forward to the next time you and I visit again here together in the X Zone.
You're welcome, Rob. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to it as well.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye now. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour was DARRYL Berry. Interesting. Truly interesting. Now, when I come back from this break at the top of the hour, I'll be joined by Richard Southall. We're going to be talking to Richard about, guess what? Haunted plantations of the South. Ghost hauntings, things that go bump in the night, continue here in the X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, as we keep on investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, Monday through Friday, 8 until midnight Eastern, right here. Where? On the Starcom Radio Network. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.